Give it up for our final presentation of the day, Pauline Keyes, Quality, the Price of Inaction.
I promise that I will do my very best not to keep you any longer than I absolutely have to. Do we have the clicker? Does the clicker work? Okay, I'm going to talk to you a bit about quality. I'm going to zoom on through that bit. Before I get too far into it, a wee bit about myself. Hate talking about myself, by the way, but did the whole Java development thing, been around for more years than I care to remember. Did the whole tech lead thing, and with that, kind of naturally fell into leadership and found myself doing Scrum Master and all that kind of stuff. Made that bold jump into management formally last year, and I'm happy to report I am enjoying it so far. In the right environment, with the right role models, it's not actually as scary as what I had thought it would be for quite a few years. And with that jump, my horizon has broadened quite significantly, especially within BV. We have the opportunity to see an awful lot more. I am going to talk a lot about BV. I can't help it. We're awesome, and I have really good stories for you. It's not a sales pitch. It's just what I want to be able to do is to show you what I have learned in the last year, how I have gone about stuff with real examples and real projects. Theory's all well and good. There's lots of reference material at the end, but I'm more interested in a real story. And with that, I want you to take that back to your own company with some enthusiasm and get it. You know, quality, we all know this stuff. It's not new. I have no magic tricks or answers for the whole thing, but we all get a bit complacent sometimes, and this and that happens, and you know, we all know how it goes. So I want to leave here with some enthusiasm. You would almost think that I have been talking to some of the other speakers as well. There's a lot of commonality in what I heard Pauline speaking earlier on today, and you'll hear a lot of the same things, and the same Sarah's just spoken. So there's a lot of common things, and that's a good thing because it reassures me that hopefully I am on the right lines. Anyway, before I get too much into quality, I kind of want to fess up. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Have you ever joined a new team and you're getting an overview from an engineer and they're making excuses for the application in some shape or form? Everybody does it. Oh, I did this and I couldn't do that. The manager wouldn't let me do this and we run out of time and all of that stuff. Have you ever been the person giving the overview and making the excuses, which is even more embarrassing? And I have done that. And with that, and when I cringe when I do those things, I hopefully that I learn something and I go, we're going to fix some of those things that I have forgotten about or let sit in the corner and get it dusty. In a lot of talks, we hear about all the fancy new stuff, and that's awesome, and I love all of that stuff. But in every company, somewhere, I'm convinced it happens everywhere, even just me, we have that smelly old dog in the corner, right? And it's the old legacy application that has been there. But I shouldn't call it a smelly dog. I mean it in an affectionate term. Everybody loves a smelly dog, right? And in Bazaarvoice, in the interest of complete transparency, and my boss is sitting in front of me here, we have one of those smelly old dogs. I look after a sampling platform, and that sampling platform, in a real quick nutshell, means that we give people free stuff in exchange for reviews. And then we use it as a tool to boost content on websites, and we market that it's all been obtained by an incentivized product so that we're still being authentic and all that wonderful stuff. That's our smelly dog, right? And you would think that it would be really, really hard to implement quality in your old smelly dog. But, and the disclaimer is that we didn't write it, we inherited it, and we brought it in-house. That's my first excuse from the last slide instead of excuses about stuff. But anyway, whenever we got it, it was a 6-hour manual deployment, and we brought it down to a 2-hour automated deployment that was no touch, kind of not quite as fancy as the stuff that Sarah was talking about with full CI/CD pipeline. That's still quality. That's still making something better. That's still taking out human error. Quality in a legacy world. Another thing that we did was that we had to do some reports, some stuff that the business needed, and instead of extending that legacy PHP code base that you sort of poke out every now and again and hope for the best, we actually used Node on Lambda with a serverless framework outside that and had it calling into the database and did it in that way. And what that did meant that we could do TDD and all that great stuff, all that wonderful quality practices. And what it also did as a nice happy side event was that the folks that look after that application, who I love dearly, and it takes a very special person to look after a legacy application, they got to learn Node and Lambda and serverless at the same time. What's not to love about that? Everybody should work in a legacy app. And I do think if you spend your time there, and I spent about half my career in legacy, production supporty kind of stuff, you learn an awful lot. So that was the smelly dog. If you're in the green field, well, sure, it's all easy. That's where the cool kids all hang out and they're experimenting every day. And all I hear in that world is, because in Bazaarvoice we have the new version of the dog, the new dog, the pup. So we're doing a rewrite. We accept that old legacy platform needs to go away. That dog needs to go to bed. And it will get there. So the other team that I look after is the new version. It's not a rewrite, it's an enhanced, it's a new platform to do something on. And it's at that stage where it's getting close, if I'm really honest, which is why I've been busy all week. But you would think, you sort of look over at the cool kids and you're thinking, sure, it's all socket cluster this and Kubernetes that and Grafana this, and you're thinking, oh man, it's so easy, I want to be over there. But we're getting close to production, and with that comes pressure. There's pressure to deliver. And every time that old smelly dog creaks, something creaks over there, the pressure and the urgency to get that new platform out surfaces again, which is painful whenever you look after both of them. And the point that I'm getting to is that what you have to do is hold true to those principles. You know what the right thing is to do. As a manager, I know that my team knows what the right thing is to do. I do ask the awkward questions. Do we really need this? Are you sure we really need this? And if the answer is yes, then I'm like, right, lads, that's it. We're doing it. And it means what it means for the timeline. Because we can't afford to cut corners, because it will catch us in the long run. And Sarah talked about a lot of that stuff that happens. So yeah, still can be done regardless of whether you're legacy or whether you're in greenfield. And as I talk through all the parts of quality, I want to pay some homage to the smelly old dog as well as the new stuff, because it's important. And we learn something. Okay then. So the first thing we think about whenever we think about quality is in the technical area. It's all about your pipeline, right? And if you're in a world where you're concentrating and you're in greenfield, that's all you can see. But in the real world, you have to support that thing whenever it gets to production. So in the new world, all the stuff that Sarah talked about, you need to monitor that thing. You need to know that whenever it gets into production, you know how it's going to behave at any time. It's like shining a torch, and without it, you're kind of just sort of fumbling around and trying to figure out what to do. We've all had that production release whenever you crap yourself, something's happened and you don't have any of the monitoring. Long time ago, and thankfully I have enough scars to know that's a really bad idea. In the legacy world, the CIC, or the technology, the quality around technology is still important, and the focus should be everything out round. I can't stop failures happening in that legacy platform. I can't stop it happening whenever the new platform goes live. It's inevitable. So where you're better spending your time is at understanding how quickly you can recover. And again, there's an awful lot of overlap with what you talked about, Sarah, who goes into a lot more technical details than me. But the important thing is understand your mean time to recover. And if it's bad, focus on getting that down. And that will serve me better than fixing all the bugs in the legacy platform. So I know in that old sampling platform, I know exactly how long it takes me to get it back whenever something goes wrong. I also have all the monitoring in place that whenever it starts to creak, and the reason why it creaks is because we have set limits on how big your campaign can be and how many products you can sample, and they still create them too big, so the infrastructure starts getting a bit shaky. We have all the monitoring and alarms in place that we can get alerted to that, and we can react, and we get to it before something really bad happens and a user is impacted. Release often. Again, releasing often, it's a given whenever you're doing a greenfield. I want to check in the code and I want to see it go to prod, and that's what we're aiming for with the new platform, and that's kind of bread and butter what you're aiming for now. In a legacy world, do I really want to deploy that thing more often? Really? And it feels really counterintuitive to do it. And I remember whenever I started, it's sampling, I get mixed up with sampling. The sampling platform we affectionately know it as Gold Rush, so you'll hear me flip between them. But the sampling platform, whenever I joined, you kind of sort of deployed it and hoped for the best. But because of the fear, then you build up your tickets. And the more you built up your tickets, the more scared you were to deploy. And it kind of just perpetuated itself. And then failure was absolutely inevitable. And what we did was we deploy every week. All right, I'm not going CI/CD, but that's still good. And sometimes we deploy 2 or 3 times a week. And I talked about taking the deployment down to a 2-hour automated deploy. That's pretty good if you see exactly what we have to do to get it out there. So that's a quality improvement. And the more we do it, the less fearful we are of it. And if you know how you can recover, and you have all your monitoring in place, then what is there to be scared of? And one thing that you should do, regardless of whether you're in greenfield or legacy, one thing I like to do is stand up. Everybody's talking about stuff, or maybe they're whiteboarding, and everybody will start going. I'm starting making faces at me like that there, and I'm going, what's that all about? What's the crack of that? They're really scared of something. They're worried about something. Those are the things you tackle. And being a manager and sort of looking out around, those are the signs I look for whenever there's trouble somewhere. And that's where the focus should be for the team. So look at people, read them, trust your team, and know that whenever they're making those funny faces and stuff, it means do something about it in the technical realm. That's their expertise. I just kind of float along the top a little bit. Process then. Do you know, I love process. Whenever I was rehearsing this all morning, I was trying to figure out which bit was my favourite bit. Probably process, because I can get carried away with it. In BB, we do Kanban. Agile kind of normal now. It scares me that there are people out there that never know what waterfall is like. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, right? But regardless of whether you're doing Kanban, Scrum, Lean, all of those things, I'm not going to get into the weeds of one versus the other. I would love to talk about that over time. But we're not going to time, right? But any of those things, I mean, you know, even an engineer who hates process, thinks it's the manager's problem and just wants to get stuff done. Even they know whenever something doesn't feel right. A broken process, everybody feels it. Your team are dysfunctional, you're not releasing and you're not moving, everything's slow, and people disengage from the team as well. Those are all things to work out for. So, which tells you why quality in your process is so important. I don't want to be disengaged in a team. I want to enjoy myself. Process just sort of slope around in the background. Shouldn't really know it's there if it's done right. It's kind of invisible. And the story I have around quality within process is a strange one. I'm not going to get into the weeds of any of the processes, but whenever I joined BV, a couple of months in, we had an engineering manager, Kelly, came over from Austin, and his job was we were all going to workshop, right? We were going to get to play the Kanban game. Kanban game is awesome for anybody. I highly recommend it. Isn't it? It really is, right? I think I enjoyed it way more than everybody else, but still. Anyway. Because Danielle actually was in the same session with Kelly at the time. And we got through the Kanban game, you know, I am posted note and sharpied up and ready to go. Because the next bit was we were going to look at our process, look at what we do today and make improvements on that. Oh, I'm all over that. Like, it's brilliant. Kelly says, Pauline, out. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, you're not part of this. I'm like, of course I am. This is my gig. I've got this, Kelly. He said, no. And he was taking no mess, and then he sort of put me over to the side, and I squirreled away looking at replenishment and stuff like that there. The team were to do their process. They were to define what their process was today. They were then to define all the improvements that they wanted to make, set their own WIP limits, do their team norms, all of that kind of stuff, and I wasn't allowed to interfere or influence in my silent ninja style that I can do, which is why Kelly completely removed me, and he was absolutely right. My motives were innocent, by the way. I had nothing other than sheer excitement about it. Anyway, it's true. And with that, the team came up with their process, and then they shared it with me at the end, and I'm like, right, that's good. And then I went off and swirled away in Jira and got all the admin sorted out for it. And the point that I'm getting to about why it's important, bear with me, is a couple of weeks later I stand up, this was the sampling one team, and we're sitting and they're going through the board, and I'm sitting at the back, so going, testing columns red, which in Jira means that you've broke your WIP limit and you've put too much work in there. And you typically see it, I've seen it in plenty of teams where it's always in the testing column. And it's typically because the testing stuff, we've got one QA engineer, but if everything gets backed up, it ends up sitting there and gets stuck. And like nobody wants to do the dishes after dinner. You'll find that the engineers will want to lift new tickets and nobody will help out the pure QA engineer and they'll get hammered, right? But team had set their WIP limits, get to the end of stand-up, and I'm like, excuse me. And I'm like, what's up? And I'm like, you're bringing your WIP limits there? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what was your rule that you defined in Kelly's section? And what was that you said that you would handle? How would you handle when you broke your WIP limit? And they all said, well, we said we would swarm on it, and then everybody would have to test and ticket it, and we would get through it. And the moral of my story is that I didn't define the process or say what their WIP limits were. All I did was hold a mirror up to them and show them their own rules, which is maybe a bit of a sneaky trick, but it works really well. And it's coaching, it's good coaching. All I'm doing is showing them their own rules and asking them to follow their own rules. And with that, they look after their WIP limits and they change their mind and they swarmed and got rid of that in that instance. Now that's a sign of quite a newly formed team. As your team matures, and you should have a good coach with you when you're defining your process. The coach, you define your process and your coach will do exactly what I did by holding the mirror up. And as the team matures, they'll recognise these things themselves and the need for the coach will just sort of step away. Good quality process means that you're letting your team define the process. If they define it themselves, they will follow it and they will be bought into it. And with that, they'll get the shoes on the right feet and the kid will take off and they'll run. Like what I did there with the shoes. Product then. If you don't have quality within your product, you're basically building the wrong thing or something along those lines. I don't pretend to be a product manager, but I empathise with them. And in BV, the engineering manager and the product manager sit very closely together. They have to. It's like my left arm is my product manager. And the product manager, part of it, there's the outward focus. And the outward focus is about talking to clients. It's about talking to your services team, support, all of those people that sit outside the R&D team. And recently, the new sampling platform that I'm talking about, we finally got enough functionality together that we can get some users to test that, right? So I'm thinking, Brian, who's our UX person, I'm like, on you go, son. Way you go and get that tested and let me know how that goes. That's what I inwardly thought. We have so much stuff to build, to be ready. I can't afford the time to go. What the right thing to do was, and what we actually did do, was it's like, you know what, I'm really curious about how they're going to use it. And I emerged from my engineering cave, along with another engineer. And off we went to Austin with our UX folk and our product folk and went out and did the user testing. It is class what you learn when a real user uses your system and you're watching them like a proper user. And it's kind of like poke them through the... It was like two completely different people talking different languages meeting. It was brilliant. And with that, not only did we understand what to build, which is what our product manager would give us in stories, but we understood the why and the context, and particularly in my case with the sampling platform, these are the same users that usually exist in Smelly Dog, right? And to understand and empathise with the pain that they go through means an awful lot for collaboration. And collaborate with people. Lift that curtain and have a wee look in behind there and see how real users use it. We came back to Belfast buzzing and we were telling everybody about it for weeks. And we're going to do it more often. We should be doing that way more often and not leaving it till our product folk. On the other side of the product is the inward facing stuff. Where does your product manager and your UX folks sit? What cadence meetings do they go to? And what I'm trying to get to is they should be inside your team. Don't care about the organisation. They can report whatever way they like. I'm not interested in that part of it. Maybe I should be, but I can't control that bit. But what I can do is make sure that I talk to my product manager like they are part of my team. Not alongside, not blowing a forecast over the wall and going, yeah, or taking stories over the wall. It shouldn't work like that. An example I have of that is last year I looked after another platform, needed a bit of an overhaul. Didn't have very many people. Danielle was one of those people. Didn't have very many people. We wanted to do a lot more stuff than what we had people for. And with that, we were being choked a little bit with support tickets and stuff that happened every now and again. Needed to talk to the product manager. She was coming over to Belfast. And we basically spent a week in a room looking at all the problems with the system, what the architecture was. We didn't write that one either, by the way. But with that, we made a plan of what we wanted to do, and the product manager was there the entire time. We speak different languages. She speaks product, I speak tech, and we have to meet somewhere in the middle. You had a give and take, because you don't want them to switch off. Oh, here they go again, they're talking about AWS. Yeah, there, but you can find some common ground there, because the value that you get out of that is our product manager went back to Austin, fully armed with exactly what we needed and what we wanted to do and why it was important, and knew all the technical parts and below it. Things like timelines, a whole lot, got it all out in the open. Treat your product people like they are in your team and give them all the trust and collaboration and transparency that you would with any of the engineers. Don't treat them separate. And with all of that, you build a better product. I'm nearly there, folks. People, left people to the end, deliberately, because it's the one that really gets me. And whenever we think about quality people, yeah, hire good people. Hiring is awesome. We should do a really good job of that. But that's not what I really mean here. What I mean is quality people. People behave better when we have a people-centered environment and then a people-centered culture. That's a lovely old buzzword, right? It's a good theory to have. And the story that I have around that one is it shows action. And it shows there's a difference between somebody who talks about being people-centered. Yeah, hey, baby, we're people-centered. That's a great statement. But how do I actually know that? And how do I show that? Paul's sitting right there, but I'm going to talk about Paul. Sorry. So, like and bear with me, it's a really good story. So I started BB and getting the groove on. I'm like, yeah, I've got this. This is grand. Looking after 3 apps, no bother. Then everything goes on fire at once, which happens now and again. Even in the best, I think even in the best of companies, things like that happen. Everybody's had a week like that, right? And my one-to-one was coming up with Paul that morning, and sometimes I was just thinking, do you know what? I'd love to cancel my one-to-one. I've got far too much to do. Have you ever wanted to cancel it whenever you were just too busy? But the answer is don't do that. That's about the worst thing you can do. And the reason is I'm thinking, I'm going to have to tell Paul that I don't have that forecast on. And I don't have that stuff for recruitment that I need to do and all the rest of it. And there's legitimate reasons. There was a fire I was putting out. I was sitting with a sampling team while they were firefighting in a week earlier on in the week. Everything all went to pot for the rest of the week. So I fessed up to Paul in Lean. I know these things need done, and I don't have them done. Did he give me a roasting for not having all the work done? Nope, didn't do that. Did he silently wish that I just got it all done because the dates can't shift, and he sort of talked to me and then didn't really do anything and I marched on out the door? That didn't happen either. He kind of laughed at me because I went into verbal diarrhea mode as I do whenever I'm scrambling for my life. With no other reason other than my own pride of the whole thing. What he did say was, the first thing he says is, are your team okay? Yeah, of course. And he goes, have you done all your one-to-ones this week? Because I would obviously have one-to-ones with each of my team members. And I'm like, yes, of course. I'll never cancel a one-to-one. It's the worst thing to do. It's okay whenever I'm cancelling 9, but it's not whenever it's the other way around. There's double standards. I don't like those double standards. But anyway, and I says, yes, Paul, of course, all those things are done. That's really important. And he says, well, then, everything else is secondary. I went, really? And deadlines aren't shipping like. And he said, well, how about we do that forecast now? And I'm like, I told you, I wasn't prepared. He goes, you don't need to be prepared. Let's do it now. And we sat and did the forecast. I don't know whether you remember, but I remember. And we did that forecast there and then. And then you think, well, Pauline, actually, you're matrix managed. What did the other boy think? So I have a manager in Austin that's the portfolio manager, obviously more interested in deliverables and all that kind of stuff. And I rocked up with my one-to-one with Pauline. Same ramble went on. And he says, chill. And I'm like, I can't chill. And he says, chill. He goes, there is always more work than you have capacity for. Do the right thing. Do the top priority stuff. I'm like, okay. And he goes, is your team okay? How did you get on with that outage? Did everybody come out of it okay? How are the gold rushers? And I'm like, they're okay, have my one-to-ones, everybody's happy, everything's stabilised. And he says, well then, everything else will handle it. And he says, how about I get them Jira tickets in for you? And I'm like, you're actually going to put my Jira tickets in for me? He's like, yeah, whatever, grand, I'll do that, we'll split. Paul's helping me with your forecast, you get the whole lot done. And the story moves on then, right? But what the point I'm trying to get is these are two senior directors in the organisation that I work for. They're my two bosses, right? And they don't talk about being people-centred. They actually get their hands dirty when I need them and they help me. What example does that set for me as I work with my teams? Obviously, if that's how I'm treated and helped by people who are way more important than filling in Jira tickets and doing forecasting, but they still do it, and they prioritise that whenever I need them. So I do the same thing for my team. And then they do the same thing for each other, and that breeds a culture. That's people-centred culture. Doing something to help people and prioritising the right thing when somebody needs help. Doesn't matter what your role is, doesn't matter what your grade is, you get your hands dirty and we all muck in because we're on the team. How does this all relate back to quality? If you look after your people, they will look after everything else for you. If you have the right culture, people care about each other, they look after each other, and they care about what they do as well. We talked about product and getting in there and lifting the curtain and having a look at what goes on in behind in the organisation, collaboration, transparency with people, the tech stuff. Make sure you know how to recover from an outage. It makes it a way less stressful for the people too. Get your chance in a legacy world to work with someone a bit of new tech, even just a wee bit. And if you can get that boulder lifted to get into some cool tech stuff and legacy, you kind of get a bit of momentum and sell the blazes out of it whenever you do it. But all of those things rely on people. And if you look after your people, let them define their own process and you hold the mirror up and get them coached. You'll find the quality comes out of that. Sounds a wee bit soppy and a bit soft, but I absolutely believe that it's true. And loyalty among people in the teams, you produce good stuff and you take pride in your work and serve each other in that. Everything else, it's not that I'm saying that looking after your platform or delivering to the customer is important, but if you look after each other and your team and you work well together and you are driven, everything else is going to sort itself out. That is me, folks.